Hello everyone, I am Murugan. In this video, we'll discuss about cloud computing and Windows Azure. This presentation was a part of 2014 Global Windows Azure Bootcamp. Bootcamp was held across 138 cities around the world, and I got to be a part of a bootcamp which was held at Chennai. My topic of discussions were cloud computing, Windows Azure, and Windows Azure Storage. In this video, we will be covering cloud computing and Windows Azure. We will have separate videos for blob storage, table storage, and queues under Code for Beginner. To understand cloud computing, let us look at application components of website. When you type in the URL www.microsoft.com on a web browser, the request is sent to the server, and server responds with text, images, videos, etc. Our focus of interest is web server. The web server could reside on premises, that is on your own infrastructure, be it home or office, where you manage and maintain the server as well as its operating system. Then it could be on a shared hosting. With the shared hosting as well as the remaining other two, your web server is located on a data center. With the shared hosting, there is a monthly fee associated with it. The main disadvantage of shared hosting is your website is hosted among hundreds or thousands of websites that would reside on that particular server, and resources are shared among many users. And another limitation of shared hosting is access to server is limited. You can set up your server using only a control panel, and you can upload the file using FTP. Dedicated server and virtual private server are similar. Only difference is in a dedicated server the entire computing power is available to you, whereas in a virtual private server you get access to a virtual machine which runs its own operating system, but the computational resources are shared among many virtual machines. There is one more type of hosting called as co-located hosting. It is very much similar to dedicated server. The only difference is the hardware is also owned by you. What you do is you take your hardware and you place it on a data center where you actually pay for the maintenance and bandwidth. Now, is there another type of hosting available? Yes, there is another alternative, and that is actually called as the cloud computing. Let us look at a little bit of history about cloud computing. The concept is not new. It dates back to 1950s. It became more prevalent in the 90s, and since 2000 it became a buzzword. Amazon was the first provider to bring its cloud data center and make it available to public. In April 2008, Google released Google App Engine. Windows Azure was released by Microsoft in Feb 1st, 2010, and there are several providers like IBM, Salesforce, etc. Cloud computing became a hot topic in mid 2008, and by mid 2009 it has achieved top buzzword status. As a popularity, mid 2009, search on Bing.com for cloud computing returned 92 million hits. Now let us look at the different definitions that are available for cloud computing. Cloud computing is a computing in which resources are provided as a service. The term cloud computing implies access to remote computing services offered by third party via TCP/IP connection on public internet. This is my favorite. Cloud is an on-demand, scalable, multi-tenant, self-computing resource. On-demand means it is available whenever you need it. You can use the browser click. You can set up a server with a few clicks. Scalable means as your computing requirements grow, more machines can be added with a slider or with a couple of clicks. Multi-tenancy. This is what makes cloud computing affordable. So when you log on to a cloud platform, you feel as if the entire data center resources are available to you. Self-hosting, self-service means you don't need to ask someone to provide compute resource to you. You can set up and add machines by yourself by click of a button. If you look at the earlier scenarios, you had to talk to the infrastructure guys. You should ask them to set up the operating system. You would need to ask them to provision the virtual machines, etc. for you. Now with cloud computing, it is much easier. All you need to do is just go to Windows Azure portal, sign in. You can just slide in and you can increase the number of servers that you need, or you can even automate that process. Let's look at the top 5 advantages of cloud computing. It allows enterprises to get their applications up and running faster. It allows companies to avoid upfront infrastructural cost. It improves manageability and less maintenance. Adjust resources to meet fluctuating and unpredictable business demands. Pay as you go model. Encourage standard systems. Now cloud is a utility computing. What do you mean by utility computing is it is like utilities like electricity or water, in which you pay only for what you use. So that is one of the advantages of cloud computing, and deployment to cloud server is also pretty easy. You can just deploy from using your Visual Studio itself. Now let us look at scenarios in which cloud computing is ideal candidate. Let's look at 4 scenarios here. One is unpredictable bursting, one is predictable bursting, on and off, and growing fast. Let me explain these scenarios with an example. Unpredictable bursting. Say if you are a news channel and you have a website, what happens is when some hot news comes, you have a lot of traffic that is predictable that comes to your website. That is one example of unpredictable bursting. In a traditional environment, it is very hard to predict the number of users that might visit your website, and it's difficult to provision the machines for this kind of eventualities. But with Windows hosting, you can scale up and scale up the computing instances as you need them, or scale down when it is not needed. Predictable bursting, again, example, you sell fireworks, you have peaks at different intervals, say during Christmas season, during some local festival. These are the only times that your website, if it is an e-commerce website that sells firecrackers, it will be visited the most. So this is an example of predictable bursting. You know that December, say 20th to January 2nd, you understand that a lot of people will be buying firecrackers from your website. So during that period, we can increase the number of compute instances that you might need. On and off scenario. If you have seen the movie Avatar, you can see that there's a lot of graphics that needs to be rendered for that kind of a movie. Now, movie 3D rendering is a good example for on and off scenario, because when you push in the movie for rendering, it needs a lot of computing power, it needs a lot of machines to render the content. But once the rendering is done, there will be a lot of gap between the next rendering. Now the third one is growing fast. Now this is a scenario in which you build a portal and it becomes popular day by day Today you have around 1000 visitors. Tomorrow you are or in the next 1 month you are expecting 100,000 visitors, and in say 6 months time or 1 year time you are expecting over 1 million visitors. Now, cloud computing makes it much easier to scale. All if your architecture is designed on scalability, then all you need to do is increase the number of compute instances, and you are good to go. With cloud computing, as I have mentioned earlier, everything is provided as a service. Let's look at the different cloud computing service offerings: infrastructure as a service, software as a service, platform as a service, file storage as a service, database storage as a service, monitoring as a service, integration as a service, information as a service, security as a service, process as a service, communication as a service, testing as a service, and much more. Now, let's look at the different deployment models. A virtual private cloud is an on-demand configurable pool of shared computing resources allocated within a public cloud environment. It provides a certain level of isolation between different organizations. VPC or virtual private cloud is most commonly used in context of cloud infrastructure as a service. You can see the service model on the right, infrastructure as a service. We will discuss about the different service models in detail. The second one is public cloud. Service provider makes resources such as applications and storage available to the general public over the internet. Now, this is the most common form of cloud computing, and this is the most widely used form of cloud computing, where you share the resources with different organizations or people. Then this is the third and the most interesting form of hybrid computing, which is the most popular among corporates. Hybrid computing is when the organization manage some resource in-house and some resources are made available to the public or their own staff using a public cloud. Now, it's a combination between a private cloud and a public cloud, where some of the core business logic is probably stored within the company or within a private cloud within the cloud, and some services are stored within the public cloud itself. Now let's look at Windows Azure, which is actually the Microsoft cloud computing platform, or let's call it the Microsoft cloud operating system. Now let us make it simple. What is a cloud? For now, I'll define it as just another hosting provider which provides everything in the form of services. Now these are the main service models provided by Windows Azure: infrastructure as a service, platform as a service, and software as a service. Package software, or your own software in which you maintain the network, storage, servers, virtualization, middleware, runtime, data, application. We have already discussed this. As we have discussed earlier, this is the on-premises hosting. Now let's look at the difference between infrastructure as a service, platform as a service, and software as a service. In infrastructure as a service, the cloud provider, Windows Azure, manages the networking, storage, servers, and virtualization, and it provides virtual machines where you can host your own OS. You can install your own middleware, runtime, data, and application are completely managed by you. Platform as a service is the most commonly used service in cloud, in which Windows Azure manages the network, storage, virtualization, operating system, middleware, runtime. Main thing is you don't have to worry about patching the operating system or installing antivirus or other things, or installing even the .NET versions. It's all taken care of by Windows Azure. All you have to worry about is writing the application and managing the data. Software as a service, let me start with an example. Your Gmail or Office 360 is an example of software as a service, where you pay for the application and use it. Now let's look at the different components of uh, Windows Azure. These are the three main components: virtual machine, cloud services, and websites. And this is a PDF that I downloaded from windowsazure.com. As you can see, cloud services one of the main components, in which you have web role, worker role instances available, virtual machines, then mobile services, websites, media services, etc. You can download this PDF, which is available at windowsazure.com. Now, which applications are ideal for Windows Azure? Now, even a small website is ideal for Windows Azure, because uh, there is something called as websites, which is available in Windows Azure, where you can host small websites or even small web applications there. Then site with low traffic, I would, if it is me, I would go for uh, a shared hosting, which is much cheaper than the current Windows hosting. But if it needs to be highly available and reliable, then again my first option would be Windows Azure and cloud computing. Now, if the four scenarios that I have earlier discussed, when it is highly scalable, when you have unpredictable loads, when you want to render, say, graphics content, again Windows Azure is ideal candidate, because as architects, one of the most difficult or challenging job is actually uh, to plan for capacity or capacity planning. And earlier days we had to talk to the infrastructure guys and make sure that the hardware is available. Now with cloud computing, everything could be done at a click of a button. Or now again, when you talk about cloud computing is not really a buzzword among computer professionals, but it's a buzzword among the general public as well. So for me, if I am building an application, definitely the first candidate would be a cloud platform. Thank you. If you have any questions, you can actually send it to murugan@leather.com. You can visit my website, windowsazureforbeginner.com. There is a Facebook forum. Feel free to post questions there. I'll be more than happy to answer them. Thank you.